Hi, this is geometry lesson on measurement. This is part 2. So you should have already watched the part 1 video. And we're picking up on the back of the first page talking about measuring angles. So here we have two angles here. And I'm going to go ahead and use a protractor to measure this. Now, one of the things to notice with the protractor is you have values from it looks like it's starting here 10 to 170, but really it starts here even with this line. This is 0, then it's 10, this is 20, goes all the way to 160, 170, and back down to this line would be 180. If you look at the outside, that has all the showing all the values all the way down to this line, and there's a tick mark for every degree on here. So I tend to try to use the outside of the ruler rather than the inside. So if I'm measuring here, it's automatically putting me into this inner circle to measure it, not the outer circle. So if I try and go this way with it, turn my paper upside down, now I can use the outer circle to do those measurements. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to try and get this angle right in the center of this, this vertex right at the center of this circle, right there. So I kind of want that right in the middle. And then this bottom line I want lined up here with the other one. So, if I uncover it, you can see there's two lines. I want to match this line up so it covers that line perfectly, and then that corner is right there at the center. Oops, I moved it. And you might have to move it around a little bit till you feel comfortable that you have that. I think that looks pretty good. So if I look here at this angle, well, it looks like it's hitting right here about 150. Sorry, not 150. Well, if I go to 150, it looks like it's a little bit over here. But remember, we're using this outer one. I think it's close to 29 degrees. The problem is this line doesn't go as far out as I need it to really be certain. So I can go ahead, take my ruler, and when I draw a line and I want it to be close to it, I want to put my pencil down first. I'll bring the ruler in and then try to match it up so I see the same amount of line showing all the way across. If I put my pencil here, I think that's still pretty good. So if I draw this should follow the line, and I'm just going to extend it out more so I can get that reading. So we'll go ahead and come back here, line this up again, and look, it looks like it's right there, about 29 degrees. There's 30, there's 29, that's where my line is. It's a little bit more than 29 though, so I would say 29.3, so I can kind of make a guess there. So I'm going to say 29.3 degrees. Now remember, that 0.3, that's my guess. This is where I'm estimating. I'm confident on the 29. I'm trying to make my best guess at the 0.3. So just know when that happens, your accuracy, you're admitting that at this point, my last digit, that is going to be a guess. So any math I wind up using this for, I need to know that my accuracy is really limited to this 0.1 degree. All right, let's go to the next one then. I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to set this up, try and get that lined up. There's my center point, and now we can see it's going this way. It looks like it's going right here between 110 and 120, so it looks like it's 115. Once again, my line's not long enough. I'm going to have to come over here and extend it. So I'll probably start here, get my pencil set on this line, try and make that as even as possible. So when I'm over here, I should still be on that line. That looks pretty good, and then I'm going to extend that line out so that when I come back and measure it, it should be long enough. Yeah, that looks like 115, wouldn't you say? I mean, it's almost right exactly there. Oop, that's just a little bit off. Let me reset that. Yeah. Okay, well, 115 and maybe just a little bit more. Let me redo this again. So sometimes don't be afraid to remeasure it, double check it a few times, try and get as exact as you can. Well, maybe it's almost all the way to 16. I'm going to try and redo that again. Yeah, I would say almost 116. So what, maybe 115.8, 0.9? It's hard to tell with that big of a line, right? So you are making a guess there. So I'd say 115, we'll say 0.8 degrees. And so that's how we are going to do our angle measurements there. Oh, I wrote them upside down. Well, to be fair, my paper was upside down when I was measuring. 115.8 degrees, and that was 29.3. So the question is, how close is good enough? And think about times that you had to measure something. How accurate did your measurement need to be? And so during class, I had people get into groups and talk about times they've had to measure things and how accurate they needed to be, and then had them share out that information. And so what I was looking for is times when it didn't have to be that accurate. You were just trying to get an estimate. You're going in to buy fabric, right? And you buy it in yards, right? So you just want to make sure you get enough, maybe a little bit extra. So you figure out basically what you need, and you round up a little bit, so it doesn't have to be super accurate. You don't need it to the millimeter. That's a good example where you don't need to be super accurate. To the nearest yard is good enough as long as you know you have more material, a little bit more than you need. But if you're working in a machine shop and you're making a part that goes in a car engine, well then how accurate it needs to be, it probably needs to be pretty accurate, especially if it's something that goes in the engine. So there you're looking at what they call tolerances that are, maybe 0.01, 0.001. You're looking at very small discrepancies. So that in that case, the measurement needs to be super accurate, and they have special tools for that. And we'll talk more about that. Draw a line segment that is 15 centimeters long. Oh, speaking of being super accurate, let's go back to the other stuff on the front page. Now the tool we're using, just using a ruler, not super accurate, but they do have other tools. And so I do want to show you a tool that is sometimes used called a vernier caliper, and this is it right here. So we're going to turn that on. Okay, we'll zero it out. Right now it's at 0. So when I roll it, and this is currently in inches, when I roll it, it actually changes the value. So if I come down here and I want to measure out this line, I can continue to pull it out. Hopefully it's long enough for this. And it may not be. Oh, nope, I think it is. So I can set this right at the edge, and I can try and roll it in until it hits that edge. And here I have 6.021. Now this is a better tool. Remember, 0 to 0, that is where my rounding, that's where it's rounding. So these other values are a lot more dependable than ours, right? When we did 6 inches, we're kind of saying 6.0, but we're saying that 0.0, well, that's not exact. But here we get a much better and closer answer. Let's switch it to millimeters. So that's 152.9 millimeters. In centimeters, that would be 15.3. Wow, we did a pretty good job, right? It would be 15.291 is what they're saying, 291, which is really close to 0.3. But this is more accurate. So they do have tools where you can get a much better accurate measurement. So these are kind of cool and fun to use. We'll mostly be using rulers. I don't have a vernier caliper for everybody, but if there's time we need to break it out, we certainly can. All right, let's go and flip back. Now our job is to draw a line segment that's 15 centimeters long. So when we do that, let's put our pencil down. We'll go ahead and put a dot here, kind of where we're starting, and I would put a dot here where we're ending, so that we're kind of figuring that out. And then we'll just draw a nice straight line. Important to hold down the ruler tight. That's pretty good. I'm happy with that. Let's go and flip. Now, angles are tougher. Angles are tougher. So I'm going to go ahead and just start with a line. I'm going to go this way. And then I will put an end point here. And now what we're trying to draw is a 32-degree angle. So we'll go ahead and bring this here and try to line up that dot right here, even with this line and this horizontal line. Try and put that in the center and get this line to go over the line that we drew. So take your time in getting everything angled up right. And now I need 32. So 10, 20, 30, 32. So I'm going to try and put a dot right there at 32. So I placed it right there, and then I can move that away and bring my ruler in. Now when drawing lines, take your time. I set my pencil down onto the dot, move my ruler to it, and then slide this over to where I think the other dot should be. Then I'm going to bring my pencil over here and make sure that I slide that against that. And I'm actually going to go back and forth and make sure that this feels comfortable right on the edge of the ruler, so that when I draw my line, there we go. And if we want, we can put some arrows on the end there. There's my 32-degree angle. But you kind of go back and forth between the dots, make sure your ruler's where you want it before you actually commit to that line. Alright, let's go and do a 90 degree. So I'm going to go ahead and draw this here for a 90 degree. Bring my ruler in. I didn't actually put the full dot there, but I know that the edge of my line needs to be right here. Right, so I want that to match up. Make sure it covers my line. That looks pretty good. A little bit higher. There we go. And then I'll come up here to 90 and put a dot. My dot here. Make sure it matches the dot at the end here. It's pretty good. We'll draw the line. Alright. 145 degrees. Alright, so I'm going to start with, once again, a line down here at the bottom. Now this is bigger than 90 degrees. So go ahead and put my dot here at the end. Try to measure that in there. Sorry. Get my dot measured in. That looks pretty good. And 145, so there's 90, 100, 10, 20, 30, 45 right here. So try and put a dot there. And then we'll connect those dots. There we go. 145 degrees. Now for this 90, I could write 90 degrees there, but if I put this little box there, that symbol means right angle, which means it's a 90-degree angle. Alright. We'll go ahead and flip to the last one. And this is to draw a triangle with side lengths of 10 centimeters. I've got a lot of room here. So 10 centimeters. I'll go ahead and start that out. Put my dots here for 10 centimeters. Draw it over. And there we go. Now, the problem is, where do I put my other one? Like, if I draw it from here to here, these won't connect at 10 centimeters. So I kind of need them to be even. There's a couple of ways to do this. I could try and guess and check and keep drawing. I could try to measure this angle, and the angle for this, if it works out, should be a 60-degree angle. So I could do that. Measure that there, and I could mark something at 60 degrees. And if I measure from here to this point, I should get about, I need to draw a line at 60 degrees. Nice and, I'm going to draw nice and light. So, I should measure 10 centimeters on this. I'll set 10 centimeters right here and then make a mark at 10 centimeters on this line. That looks pretty good. And then this should also be 10 centimeters back to this, and it's pretty close. It's pretty close. So if I were to draw that in, it's a little bit too short. Like 10 centimeters doesn't quite hit that corner. It's close though. And so understand, when we do these drawings, we're going to have some error in there. So the question, is it close enough for what we're doing? If it's not close enough, then we probably need better tools for it, right? As opposed to just a ruler and a compass. Another option would be to find the center of this line and find the middle and then draw a 90-degree angle straight up. So I'll line that up there, line it up with this, and mark 90 degrees from this center point. So if I do that, so it's pretty darn close, right? Maybe just a little bit different. See how that works. 10 centimeters. Once again, still pretty close. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that in. So what does that tell me? Well, this mark was pretty close. I think this angle might be a little bit too big. Maybe it should have been just a little bit lower. But I still think that's pretty close. So these are all about 10 centimeters. And like I said, there's a couple of ways you can do it. But understand, you're just about as good as your tools are, and there's a little bit of art to this in that you might have to, you make markings, you see it's off, you have to erase and remeasure again. All right, that concludes part 2 of this lesson.